Hey there Chumbas, welcome to Team Nomad Gaming's first meta-analysis in video format. So you might have seen that in the past we had some article format meta-analysis on our website, which is teamnomadgaming.com, but now we've decided to change the format a bit, and instead of the articles we are going to publish our meta-analysis in each month in a video format. So how is it going to look like? Our meta-analysis this month has been produced by takikiraly, so what I'm gonna do is just narrate over his video and at the end of the video provide an additional deck from my side. So let's see what's in store for us. So the first deck is Nilfgaard's Double Cross, which has been in the meta for months, and most of the time Karathi Heatwave, Joachim and Moshi Truffle are replaced here and there. So in this particular case we are using Joachim and Karathi Heatwave. Moshi Truffle is not really preferred here. The reason for that is that Joachim is such a huge tempo that it cannot be left out, so that's why we are using him. And you might wonder why we are including Artorius Vigo instead of Furcart, so that's also a question here, which one to use. Because if you use Furcart, then you can have Alba Armored Cavalry as a lock, but this time we decided to use Artorius Vigo and have a 4 provision lock with the fun Morlehem Hunter. Furcart might not be always worth it. Regarding the mirror matchup, it's very important to play the Blightmakers and also John Calveit. If your opponent does not play John Calveit in the first round because it's not in his hand or just doesn't want to use it, you can go for a 2-0, because most of the time he's going to use John Calveit in the second round, and his key cards, the best cards, are going to be in his deck. So yeah, that's all about Nilfgaard's Double Cross deck. And let's have a look at Nilfgaard's other main contender, which is the Imprisonment deck. So this one was created basically because you can see the Northern Realms win rate is very high, so a counter deck was created. Although we have to mention that it is a tournament deck most of the time. So when you bring this to a tournament, you can just easily ban Double Cross, because its main obstacle is going to be the Double Cross deck, which is not favored against this deck. And if you want, you can also consider using Moshi Truffle instead of a 10 provision card, as it can synergize quite well with the Illusionist. I'm going to present another Nilfgaard deck at the end of the video, so if you're interested, check the description and click on the related timestamp. But now let's move on with Northern Realms. So first of all, mages are back, as mentioned during the Imprisonment deck introduction. So Northern Realms Alumni seems to be the strongest blue coin deck. Most of the time the 9 provision card slot is replaced. In this particular case we are using Selkirk. This deck has very good consistency with the 2 echo cards, and in some rare cases where things just don't go as they should be, you can use Oneiro also for getting Amphibious Assault. The main strategy is to use lots of bronzes in the first round and then go heavy with the golds in the second or third rounds. This deck has also included 2 rune words for the shielded units. They might come very handy against damaging decks. And this deck also has the best thinning package, which is the Siege Master. We consider it the best thinning option now in the game. And related to the mirror matches, so the person with the first day wins most of the time, and you can go on for a 2-0 victory. So it's basically the usual mage deck with Inspired Zeal, and due to the fact that there are not so many control options, it's just really strong. Imprisonment is one of the hardest matchups against this deck. The next Northern Realms deck is a Stockpile deck, which is quite underrated, but it can crush most of your opponents. So this is a siege deck, and as you might all know, this can be bled easily if the first round is not won by us. So in order to really be able to win the first round, you can use the Reinforced Ballistas and other warfare cards. For example, the Reinforcement, which can spawn another Reinforced Ballista, and then it can just go on with the warfare cards. And you can also use Hubert as a good tempo and thinning in the first round. We also have the Revenants as soldiers, so they have great crew synergy and they are also a threat, so they have to be dealt with by the opponent. You can also use Radovid for the leader charges, also in the first round or in the second or third round. It doesn't really matter because it's quite flexible. So going for a long third round is also a viable option for you. And you can also use Muzzle as a key card, for example Letitia, Sigvald or Melusine. Regarding mirror matches, it's vital to have the first say. So this deck might seem somewhat slow and a little bit strange at the beginning, but you have to get the feel of it and it can be a quite powerful deck. Let's turn to Syndicate. So the best leader is still Jackpot, and with this leader ability you can have a devotion, non-devotion or even a bounty deck. So this particular deck uses Royal Decree and Korathi Heatwave, so it's a non-devotion deck. So we don't need Vivaldi Bank. So in most of the matchups, the Korathi Heatwave might be vital, and this deck also includes Soul, which is just a huge threat. We also included Caesar in this version because he is not expected anymore on the ladder, so it can be a surprise and a great value. And regarding the mirror matches, the bounty version might be the strongest one. Okay, so let's see another Syndicate deck, which is off the books, so it receives some minor buff, so it seems to be somewhat better than it used to be. We also have again 3 versions, the non-devotion, the devotion and the bounty. This specific version is a non-devotion one, and as you can see it includes again Royal Decree instead of Vivaldi Bank and Mashi Truffle, but this can be replaced of course with Korathi Heatwave. Due to the fact that Freak Show cannot be boosted with the leader ability, you have to use its ability as soon as you play it because it's going to be answered. What's more, you have to pay attention to the tributes because the tributes are 1 coin cheaper due to the leader ability, so you must pay attention to not miss out on the King of Beggars. So now let's move on to Skellige. First of all, Onslaught, which was used in the previous month as well. You can also have a non-devotion or a devotion deck, and most of the time the non-devotion version is more popular, but we think that the devotion one is stronger because it does not have Sunset Wanderers, and against a double cross or a mirror matchup you might run into a 1-point Sunset Wanderer if Orkvarg is used against it, so that's why we are using Fukusia instead of Sunset Wanderers. And as always the warrior package is still strong, so it's quite a reliable deck. Let's move on to another Skellige deck, which is the Self-Wound. So this archetype receives some buff, specifically Sigvald and Knut. This version is somewhat different to the ones you can see on the ladder, because this one seems to be more consistent. Most of the decks you can see are using Royal Decree, but this one has Oneiro and Sedusan Crate for some additional thinning and tempo. We also have Peller, which is a key against the lock, so if your Sigvald gets locked, then you can just use Peller. We also have Fukusia for some resurrection purposes. You can resurrect Wildcar or Melusine or even Sigvald, so you have lots of options. There are just so many threats in this deck that your opponent cannot really answer all of them, so you can even 2-0 your opponent if everything goes accordingly. You don't even have to use Melusine in the first round, you can just have it in the second round and then resurrect it in the third round. So all in all, a very consistent deck which has a lot of threats, and most of the time your opponent just doesn't have really the answers to all of them. So our final deck for Skellige is Battle Trance, which has Gedineth in it, and also the buffed Sigvald and Knut. So this deck has a lot of alchemy synergy, of course, and Mashi Truffle might work here the best, as it has also some alchemy synergy. This deck has a lot of threats, so again, Melusine and Sigvald and Knut, and also there is a defender, so it's not easy to deal with this deck. And finally, let's move on to monsters and Scoia'Tael. There hasn't been any changes to monster compared to the previous season, so it seems somewhat neglected. The viable archetypes seem to be vampires again and Keltulis, and also some White Frost decks here and there. And regarding Scoia'Tael, the Alzur SpellaTael stuff is still considered to be strong, but it's not really at the top of the meta. So now that we have finished takikiraly's video, here is one more bonus just for you, which is my Nilfgaard Soldiers deck, which brought me to pro rank this season and has been strong since then as well. So as I've mentioned before, let's have a look at this Soldiers deck. Well, it's nothing new, it's just working somehow, because there are so many control decks and damaging decks, and based on the Imperial Formation leader ability, there is so much armor on our side that the opponent cannot really do anything against it. The only bad matchup I can recall is against Double Cross. So let's have a look at it. We have some nice thinning package with the Oneiromancy and also of course with the Fun and Leader ability combo. And we should always go for using the Blight Makers in the first round if it's possible. So there is a Korathi against any scenarios or big units, but the other card against big units is Geralt of Rivia. We also have the Mashetraffel, which is a great combination with Illusionist, but also with the Alba Pikeman, because it's also bonded, so you can just line up all the Pikemans in the first row. So the combo you would like to use first might depend on your hand. If you have Slave Infantry in your hand in the first round, then you're going to use German Pikant with the cows and just transforming them into Slave Infantry. If you have Alba Pikeman in your hand in the first round, then you're just going to create a first row of damaging and attacking units. We also have Ramon here. He's also great with the Slave Infantry, also with the Alba Pikeman and Illusionist, but in case the only option is the Crossbowman, then just use it for the Crossbowman. You have to pay attention to put your deploy soldiers next to each other so that Regan can have his effect go on. So the best option is basically the Slave Infantry, but also the Illusionist, which can generate huge points. I included also Artorius Vigo, mainly for the Impera Brigade, but because there are lots of bronzes in this deck, he cannot really always find Impera Brigade, but can be still useful. And of course Frame Day is included for boosting either the Slave Infantry or the Illusionist or the Alba Pikeman army. And again, against a bigger unit we can use Peter, or we can use him defensively as well. So all in all, I think that it's a very strong package. It's hard to control because there are not so many things to control in this deck. The only targets which the opponent might get rid of is the Illusionist or the Alba Pikeman and so on, but when he damages our units, we just use our Slave Infantry and the problem is solved. So that's all that we wanted to include in our meta-analysis for February. I hope that you enjoyed this video and received some good ideas for your decks. If you have any feedback or questions, feel free to use the comment section in this video below, and see you in the next video, which is going to come out in March. See ya!